Well, good morning, everybody. I want to start off first today by talking about the pattern we've been in through most of March. Now, we started off March with some strong onshore flow in the west, but as of late, the storm systems have kind of made the turn down the coast like this before ejecting out of the southern parts of the Rocky Mountains here and then coming through the plains and heading toward the north and east. And that seems to be the trajectory that not only have we seen the last several systems go through, but the next at least three are going to follow. There's a couple of issues with this. We're going to continue to add more snow to the west in this pattern. We're talking about the potential for grabbing another 3 to 4 feet of snow throughout the Sierra Nevada and Northern California. And then also with the two subsequent systems, the one that's coming this weekend and next week, that could add a lot more snow to the Cascade Mountains. All of this kind of comes into the Four Corner states, adding more here. But what we see with this pattern is as they make the turn, we always see this more open and broad rain shadow effect, where we just continue to draw too much dry air out in this direction to fill this region in with better precipitation. With this pattern keeping a lot of cold air in the in the Canadian prairie, we're going to expect to see more snows in parts of the upper Midwest and getting into the northern plains, and more heavy rains where we've seen it, which means I think that this map, the one you're looking at here, is only going to get kind of in greater contrast as we go through the next 15 plus days or so. So since we're talking about the snow, let's go have a look at the snowfall departure from normal up to this point in March. And we can kind of just zoom our way around this if you'd like, just to see some of these numbers here. But you notice that in parts of the Sierra Nevada, where we have up to 100 inches of liquid in the snow, we've got some places that have had over 200 inches of excess snowfall. And that extends throughout the Intermountain West. And then, of course, we got these two corridors that have had a lot of snow. So what we're talking about here is adding more snow to some of the places that we've seen it. Best way to show that to you is just to look at a map that highlights where over the next 10 days we have the best chances, this is a probability map, of getting at least 3 inches of snow. If we just keep stepping this up, this is the probability of getting 6 inches of snow. There we go. And this is the probability of a foot of snow. Now you notice as I continue to go up to 18 and 24, 36 inches of snow, you notice that it primarily stays within the ranges in California and the Cascades. And that's where these next three systems are expected to put down their heaviest snowfall. If we look at total precipitation, this is over the next 10 days, looking at the probability of getting at least an inch of total precipitation. So this would be an inch of liquid equivalent where we're expecting to see this as snow. And we're going to step this up to 2 inches to try to identify the very wettest corridors here. So each of these next three systems does eject as a Midwest low. It's like a Colorado low pressure track. And that's going to have no trouble drawing this moisture up out of the Gulf of Mexico to produce these heavy rains. Now, of course, on the flip side of this, we need to identify who's going to be drier. So this, again, is the latest forecast probability of getting less than a half inch out of this. So now as we kind of distill these maps down, you understand why I think we're going to see this map only gain greater contrast as we go into this upcoming next couple of weeks. And speaking of couple of weeks, this is the latest update we got for week 2. So just look right across the middle images here. This is from the CPC, the European model, and the GFS, all three kind of showing the same corridors as having above average precipitation, taking us all the way out there to about April the 10th. Now, you know that if you watched last night's in-depth report, we did discuss how I think that after April 10th, there is a pattern shift coming, and it's going to start in Alaska if it's going to start anywhere. And Alaska's trough that we're hoping to develop there could open up some more of the United States to more warmth. But I'll tell you in a few moments, I will show you the latest model trends did bring in a bit more warmth to a larger part of the U.S., not the north and not the west, but a bigger section of the central United States, Midwest and East. So we'll get to that in just a few seconds. But of course, before that, we're dealing with this. This is just an absolutely stunning view of the deep lows that are kind of racing off of the west coast. Let me rephrase that. They're not racing. They're very slowly moving to the south, just they're rapidly developing. Now, what was beautiful about this is there was actually two separate lows. Do you see them here? And they actually, interestingly enough, become one. Now, this isn't very atypical thing. Normally what we get is something called the Fujiwara effect, where they tend to orbit one another, but the low on the back side is just completely washed out by the shear of the bigger low, and the moisture from it just gets pulled in and actually helps aid in the depth of the low that's now right here off the coast. So a very interesting satellite animation, not what I would have expected, given what I've been trained in and understanding how lows this close to one another tend to behave. But it all boils down to this. We have winter storm warnings out for California and parts of Oregon, wind advisories. This is a very windy setup. There's red flag warnings and high wind watches and advisories here in parts of New Mexico, Colorado. We have fog in a few places, plus the lingering flooding that we've been talking about for a while. High-res NAM, let's just get a good idea on where this all goes. So we're going to start off here. This is 8 o'clock this morning. We are watching some light snow in the Red River Valley of the North and also coming across the Mississippi here. But the system that tends to dominate is the one to the north. So we see this kind of fading out as the day goes on. Better rains by this evening coming through parts of Virginia and North Carolina, and we need this. This has been an area that has been very dry for the last month, other than the rains it just got on Sunday and Monday. But so I'm looking forward to seeing more moisture here. But while we watch this large system roll in and just slowly move north to south, there is a little clipper that brings a front through, bringing in some snow chances for parts of, the western Corn Belt getting into the Great Lakes states. Okay, as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, so here we go. This is now Wednesday night, Thursday morning. This is when we see a few pieces shifting around that are going to allow for this system to open up to potentially be a high-impact storm system by Thursday, Friday. And what's happening is high pressure is building off the East Coast. So that gives you this return flow of moisture, a deepening low ejecting out of the Rocky Mountains. That actually sets up the upper level dynamics to develop this low and provide the wind shear. You can see that by Thursday, we've got snow in Idaho and Montana, still in the Four Corner states. And we're just now beginning to see the scattered storms starting to show up here in the central U.S. Right now, the Storm Prediction Center on Thursday has identified parts of Nebraska and then Oklahoma and Texas is having the risk of the strongest storms, but we're again going to be watching out here on Friday for a large corridor to open up, very similar forecast to yesterday as to where the greatest risk of strong to severe storms are going to be. This is what that low looks like on Friday. What's color-coded here is not wind speed, it's total precipitable water. So we're just looking for how far to the north the Gulf moisture will make it. So with that high right there, you can see the moisture getting pulled from the Gulf and all the way up here into parts of Iowa, southern Wisconsin, of course through Illinois, Arkansas, Missouri, this whole region, including the eastern Corn Belt. Now, if you notice, the winds are coming out of the south here. But if you just step this up in the atmosphere, let's go straight to the jet stream level. They're coming out of the west and they're very strong. We're going to be having winds across Illinois that are going to be approaching, over 100 miles an hour. And as they go ripping through this direction, we're going to be looking at the right shear setup to induce the risk for these severe storms. So we just need to be watching this. It's on Friday. Let's go ahead and take a look at the multi-model analysis to get an idea on its timing. So we've already seen through Wednesday and the beginning of Thursday. So this is when the low is starting to eject. So this is now Thursday afternoon and evening. So again, scattered storms in these areas, some of which could be severe. But then we get into Friday morning, afternoon, and evening. That's when the low fully takes shape and starts to increase the risk of the severe storms right in through this area. I'm pointing on the European model. There will be cold enough air on the backside for snow. And that's why we talked about at the beginning of this where that heavy snow has been this year and where we're expecting it out of this next system. Now, while that system pulls over the Great Lakes and moves into New England with a very large warm sector, producing a lot of rain in New England, snow could be in lower Michigan, but in Ontario and Quebec, the next storm system comes into the Pacific Northwest. And that storm system dives into the Pacific Northwest. Take a look at it here. This is by Monday. That's a lot more snow for the west. And then that system ejects next Tuesday. And then you just notice as that one does the same trajectory, there's number 3. So we're going into or finishing March and starting April with 3 systems to keep a close eye on. What has changed is the temperatures. Latest data on where we expect to frost in the next 7 days. All right, so everywhere in gray is where the forecast models suggest there is the possibility of having a temperature below 32. But the temperature pattern is beginning to moderate some. Watch this. This is Tuesday into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's just the large warm sector opening up ahead of this next storm system, which is going to run right through here. Then we go into the weekend. That Saturday's cool down behind the low, quite warm east, still cold west. But then you notice by next Sunday, Monday, we open things back up to more warmth again. And the latest forecast trend, watch this, 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies. The newest European model extended to the north where these warmer conditions could possibly be setting up going into the first 5 days of April. In previous forecasts, you could have limited this to an area that's south of that line. not up in Michigan, not into the Midwest. But we're now seeing more mild conditions beginning to show up. So if we can get the moisture to be reduced, we could get a crop started. But remember, as this pattern shifts, it all needs to change in Alaska first, and that cold air will have to move across the country, I think, to get out. So we're not out of the woods yet for keeping the cold around. This is your day 10 through 15 forecast for average temperature anomalies here. Last couple things. In the report, we talk about the new Bureau of Meteorology forecast for El Niño's return. And they've now got their data out through August and September. And they're looking at Niño region 3.4 and putting the temperatures at 2.8 C above average. Excuse me. That's like Super Niño territory. Now, the Australians are most aggressive on this compared to every other forecasting agency. But, there's only a handful of years in history, and we discussed those in the report of when we've done something like this. So we're going to have to watch it carefully. Finally, the last thing is the models have trended less dry for Brazil going forward. Okay, there's still a dry signal, but less dry. Still wet throughout Argentina after multiple days of flooding rains in the last 5 to 6 days. So that's your latest update on South America. And we just need to keep watching this area. If it continues to trend wetter, that's going to push the safrinha crop to be quite large. If it doesn't, we've got something more to talk about here. All right, we'll talk soon. Thanks.